Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So I thought I'd pop upstairs and actually create a Thrinchie. I've just been watching a programme and it had a sad ending, so I was sobbing. So I've come upstairs to cheer myself up with some crafting. That's what watching an emotional programme does for you. So we're on Thrinchie 39, 40, 41, 42. Thrinchie 43. I need to put the numbers on there, those, but I haven't yet. So that's 41, 42. So Thrinchie number 43. And I've got no idea what I'm doing because I've just literally come upstairs and thought, well, while I'm creating, you may as well join me. I love, even when I haven't sort of looked at the book for a bit, I actually love going through this and just seeing each piece, and it really does sort of give me other ideas. Just switching the fan on, but it really does give me other ideas just looking through them. It's wonderful. I absolutely love them. They're just such fun, just doing different things. And this is where I got the next idea from, when I used the edge of my ink pad container. But I just love these. And, oh, what's the lady's name now? I think it was Louise Dimond, D-I-M-O-N-D. Did a couple of lovely, lovely Thrinchies with the wheelbarrow. And she did them with cats, with the cat sitting. Oh, they were just lovely. Absolutely lovely. And the auricular, I think she did it with as well. And with one of these. So she did a couple of lovely Thrinchies. I absolutely love seeing your makes, whether you copy straight from the Thrinchies or you adapt or whatever. I absolutely love seeing them all. Now, did I leave me? Yes, I've left that down there. If you want to see all the Thrinchies and other pieces of artwork that everybody's creating, you can see that in my Facebook group, which is called Tracy Evans Create, Share, Inspire. And you'll find it if you look under my name. But I just love looking through these. Absolutely love looking through them. I just think it's so much fun. It really is. Just looking at them. I don't know, when you look at them with fresh eyes, it's appreciating them all over again. Love them. Absolutely love them. So it's just appreciating that all over again. So we're on 43. So we're on Thrinchie 43. So let's take our Thrinchie. Let's make sure we've got the black Posca pen, or I am bound to forget. So I'm just going to take which one am I going to use? So I'm going to use the minis. Just can't make my mind up which one I'm going to use. Let's use Villainous Potion. So I'm going to use Villainous Potion. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the lid and I'm going to swipe some ink across the lid. Just the edge of the lid. That's it. Doesn't do your ink pad any harm. And then, do I want to put it here or here? I think I'm going to place it here. Like so. So I'm actually using the lid of the mini Distress Oxide just to create a little bit of a frame, and it'll give me that sort of, perfect-ish square. So it gives me the start of my next project. Obviously, I need to just make sure that I wipe that because we don't want to. Let's take a piece of copier paper and let's just make sure we get rid of that moisture. Turn this over. There we go. So I've now got my little square and I've got some water. And those of you that use oxides frequently know that the oxides are reactive to water and they move with water. Now, if I'm using water, I've always got a piece of kitchen roll just by the side. Now, the advantage of this is I can now blend this out because it's reactive to water. So I've instantly got that movement and that shading. So I've instantly got the shading at the bottom. Take a little bit more water and we'll have a little bit of the shading on the inside as well. So I'm just moving that ink. And it's a lovely way just to pass a little bit of time. And I love doing this. Nice and simple. Simple technique. Simple ideas. So I've not added much water to my brush. And I'm just using that tiny bit of moisture just to blend out. And you can see that works really nicely. And you can blend that just out to nothing now. So we've now got that sort of perfect, let me just lift this up for you, a nice perfect square in there, which works really nicely. And I'll be able to stand something on there, inside there, whatever I want to do. I'm then going to take a floral, which takes me ages to find. Come on, Trace. So I'm going to, is it this one? I don't know. Bear with me. You have to bear with me because I never know. So I'm looking at TE48, which is Nature Feeds the Soul. And you know what I'm like by now. I often sort of faff with what I'm doing. So I often use the acetate because that'll give me an idea of what I'm going to get. So I'm going to use this floral here on TE48. Let's grab that one. It's got a natural curve to it as well, and we want our black ink pad. Now on my black ink pad I've written black, and I always write the date. I think it's just so I know which is the, you know, the most recent ink pad, and because I saved the older ones for techniques. So then I'm going to take VersaFine Clair Nocturne. So let's take our Nocturne ink, and look how many times I give that a tap, just to make sure that is covered with a good layer of ink. Okay. And then I'm just going to, I want to add that sort of there and bring it down a bit, Tracy. This is where I spend ages deciding where it's going, spending more time doing that than sort of colouring. So let's just, now that's my black ink. And you've noticed that I don't rush that. I still give that time just to absorb onto the surface, just so that we're not rushing everything. So I've now got the basis of my Thrinchie, the start of my Thrinchie. And then I'm going to, what we started with, Villainous Potion. So I'm going to use, nobody knows, I'm going to use Seedless Preserves. I'm going to press the Seedless Preserves on there as my little paint palette, and then I'm going to use the Prize Ribbon. So let's press the Prize Ribbon on there. And now I've got two watercolour palettes. And really, if you're a professional, you use two separate brushes. I rarely use two separate brushes, as you well know. But I'm going to use one. I'm going to class the blue as my dark colour. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of the blue. So I'm classing that as my dark colour. Look how highly pigmented that colour is. And I'm just using a tiny bit of that colour. just bring a little bit of colour in here. So this is the prize ribbon, and I'll keep that brush for the prize ribbon, and then I'm going to use a brush for the seedless preserves. So I'll take a little bit of seedless preserves, and I'm just going to take a little bit of moisture off there so that it doesn't run away with me. And then I'm just going to come into the blue, no more water, and just like you would with the pencils, I'm blending the edge of that blue with my seedless preserves. There's so many names to remember, it doesn't take much for me to get confused. So I'm just picking up the seedless preserves. Look, I've hardly used any, just so you can see there. And I'm picking up that neat colour. I've still not picked up any more water. And you really don't want to flood the area. So with the moisture now, I'm going to make sure that the blue moves a little bit. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of the water, and I'm going to pick up some of that prize ribbon. And you can see that's really wet. So I'm taking my kitchen roll and just making sure that I've not got too much moisture on there. And then I'm just going to add a little bit more of that blue. Just so it blends out a little bit more. Then come back to the seedless preserves, and again you can see I've got quite a bit of moisture on there, so I just touch my kitchen roll and I can bring in a little bit more depth of colour, but not too much water. So just a little bit more depth of that colour. And you can see I've hardly really used the pigment that's on there. And what I'm going to do is just spritz with water, 1, 2. And hopefully that'll start to move a bit. If it doesn't, press a little bit more and a bit more. Can you see how that's going out like spidery? So it's working and bleeding out, so it's got that movement on there. And I'm using Pink Frog Super Smooth card, 300 GSM, our Thrinchies card, and that just moves that colour a little bit. Now, it's obviously better if you can let things dry naturally, because then this will dry flat, so it will, then you don't dry it and you don't get it all, you know, crinkling and moving. Now this one, moving more than that one, because you've got this neat colour on here, and this I've diluted already, so it's, you know, you've only got a softness to that. It's a lot more diluted, which is what we want. So I'm going to take my heat tool, and I'm just going to give this a dry, because I've got the movement that I want now. So that's absolutely fine. Just give that a dry. And you can see, even though I moved that ink when I added the shading, it still moved even more. There we go. It's a little bit more moisture on there. So let's turn that over again. And we'll just bend that a little bit. And when you add touches of white, that will come to life a little bit more. Now I'm just going to dab any excess moisture that's on there that I don't really want. So I'm then going to add a little bit of text. So I'm going to use, is it this one? Yeah. So I'm going to use TE45, and it's got some text on there that talks all about the garden. which is perfect because then I'm going to get wording that's sort of appropriate for the stamps. For those of you that have messaged me regarding the Distress Minis tins, yes, I've ordered some more and they're on the way. So I'm going to use the Villainous Potion, and I'm going to ink the Villainous Potion. I'm going to ink that text, just so I can add a little bit of text. So just adding a little bit of text. So now I'll take it off the acrylic block, and I'm going to take that text again. Obviously you can do this with the larger ink pads. There we go, just add a little bit. So I'm just adding a little bit of text here and there, just to work, so that that works quite nicely. And then what I like to do is just wipe over that stamp, just so that we haven't got any of that Distress Oxide on there. Now, whilst that just dries a little bit, you could then, she says, can't pick it up. Can you see how I've got this colour on here? You could then take your other Thrinchie and you could dab the Thrinchie into that colour. Can you see? So that you can add a little bit of water, just so that it moves a little bit, and you've still got that colour on there. And this can just take a little bit of time just to oxidise. By adding that little bit of water, it causes that reaction. Not that I ever add a little bit of water, because honestly I get it everywhere, so there's no point wasting that. We'll dab into that again. So then I'm going to take TE48 again, which is Nature Feeds the Soul. I'm going to take one of those little chickens. So let's take the little chicken. And yet another acrylic block. And you can see some lovely projects in the group that the team have made with the chicken. In fact, Lisa did a video earlier using the chicken stencil and did sort of a lifelike colouring to, you know, and it was a beautiful video. So if you want to watch that, that is just wonderful as well. So I'm going to, and you can find that in the group or on Lisa Magic Maker's YouTube channel. So I've now got my little chicken on there as well. I love these chickens, which you know by now anyway, don't you? You know how slightly obsessed I am. But it doesn't take much, does it, to make me happy and be slightly obsessed. I do love this movement, even just from a small amount of ink, which is really lovely. So let's just straighten out my card a little bit. And then I'm going to add some touches of white. Let's grab my copy of paper. And the only reason I grab my copy of paper is I just make sure that that I've got the right Posca pen, because half the time I haven't. Let me just test the other one. And also, if I've been using my Prismacolor pencils, then I like to make sure that it's got no wax on there. So I'm just going to add some touches of white just to my floral, so a little bit of sort of the pollen. I love adding the touches of white because that sort of brings everything to life, which is just lovely. And then I'm going to use the do I want to use the word garden? So like how I question myself about what I want to use. The hardest bit is deciding what word I want to use, honestly. It takes me forever. How big is that? So I honestly talk to myself until I can decide how much I want to put in there. What have we got? See, I don't want anything too big. So on the Lobelia stamp is this Timeless Beauty. And that's what I like about having options with lots of sort of possibilities for compositions. Oh, do you like how I've scrumpled my little bit of acetate up? So on there, we've got Timeless Beauty. So let's add that. And I love these little sentiments because they sometimes they just fit right. They're not too much and they don't overpower the design. It's just deciding where I'm putting it, and that is the hardest bit. And what I find is, because my card's a little bit bent, that can be a little bit more challenging. I've also got the fan on here, so that's why I'm re-inking once again. And we'll just add Timeless Beauty there. I just love the ability to add different things at different times. So then we've got this background here. You can now, it's relatively dry. You can then go in again and you can just add a little bit more of that ink if you wish. Just so you've got a little bit more. You can then spritz with water again so you get that ink oxidizing. Okay, now you can see I've got a bit of moisture under there. We definitely don't want that. So now I've got enough ink on there, so I'm just going to clean that. And then I'm going to take Villainous Potion. Let's take Villainous Potion. And I'm just going to add a little bit of water. And then let's add a few splatters of that Villainous Potion. And then what you've got, let's move that out of the way. What you've got is more ink on there. So you've got a lovely sort of mix of colour here. And then I'm going to just dry that a little bit just so I keep that colour. Again, you don't have to dry. I'm just drying a little bit so it moves a little bit less. And you can see I'm just picking up that colour, which then just gives me another layer to that background. So just from excess ink, we can then got the start for our next Thrinchie when we come into the next video. So we'll leave that doing its thing. And again, you can just add a few more little spots of water if you wish. Let's move that out of the way. Now you can see I've added these splatters of water, so I'm going to just add a little bit more water. Now what will happen is the text will also bleed a little bit as well, so it all looks very natural. I'll just wipe my non-stick craft sheet again just so that you can see some of the splatters have moved a little bit as well, just so that you can see that. Obviously my permanent stamping will not move. And then I'm just going to use my kitchen roll, a clean section, and let's just dab that just so that we haven't got any moisture on there. Now I'm going to add my white splatters, Now, as I add my white splatters, it's obviously going to take on the colour from the background, because you've got that purple colour on there that reacts to any moisture that's on there. So what I'm going to do is prevent that moisture just sitting there, and I'm going to dry it reasonably quickly so that it isn't just sitting on the surface absorbing that colour. You can use your bleed proof inks as well. Your bleed proof white, sorry, not inks. Just so you can see. There we go. Now we need to add our black edge, which most of the time I forget, but lovely Marguerite, she does all of her black outlines all in one go, and then they're done, so that you do your design and your black outline is already on there, and then you can't make any mistakes, because obviously if I make a mistake, this is then ruined. So if you do them all in advance, then you don't ruin all your hard work. And you can see I'm going over there a few times just because my Posca pen needs to flow a little bit more. The other advantage of doing them all beforehand, so doing this beforehand, it means that that black Posca pen has got time to dry, and you're not creating, excuse me, you're not creating any smudges. It's got time to dry. So let's just bring in this one. So now this is the start of your next Thrinchie. So let's bring this in. So Thrinchie, I keep forgetting, Thrinchie 43, but you can see you've got the start of Thrinchie 44 now. So that can just dry naturally, and you've got the start of another one. So if we just add this to our page now, so let's add to our page. Adhesive is what you're after, Tracy. Do you like how I didn't know what I was after then? Let's just add my adhesive. My bottle actually needs some more in. And you can see for a Thrinchie, I'm adding quite a bit of adhesive. And that's because my Thrinchie, as you can well see, is definitely bent. You can't miss that. So I'm just, let's move that down a bit. I'm just making sure that I hold that down for a few moments, because as you can see, it is definitely very bent. But you can see that adhesive, it grabs it. I do need to add the numbers to that. I might do that while we're here. And then what I like to do, I like to knock everything over like I'm doing. I like to come in again, and I like to sort of add those white touches again, just so that they're more prominent and you can see those. Let's add a little bit of white there, but you can just see that's a little bit more prominent then. And you can see we can add this. It's oxidizing beautifully, so we can add this as well, which we may as well dry now. You can see I've put a bit of ink on there. Doesn't matter. It's because it's on the, just on the edge of my Thrinchie. Let's move this out of the way. And I'm going to give this a little bit of a dry now, because we've got lots of moisture on there. So I'm just giving this a really good dry just to make sure that it's dry. But those colours are really lovely together. I'm just going to dab those, which means that I'll end with some of those areas bleached out, and you get those inks oxidizing, just so you can see that. Just lovely. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the same text stamp, and this time I'll stamp with a little bit of Morning Mist. So we'll take a little bit of Morning Mist, and I'll just have my copier paper here. And I'm going to take the copier paper, ink, blot off the first impression, and then I'm going to add the second impression, just so it's in the background. So ink with Morning Mist, blot that first impression off, and bring in the second impression. Okay, now have I done that upside down? No, I don't think I have. Do you like how I question myself? So ink onto the copier paper, and then add the second generation to our piece. You've then got these we can use and we can tear out. But I'm just going to lift this up so you can see you've got that second generation stamping on there. Now at this stage you could do your black edging if you wish, because then if you mess it up you can create another background. I'm just going to go for it. So I'm going to take the same floral from TE48 that we did before. So let's take that TE48. I'm going to take my black ink, and now this is where I have to move one out of the way and bring in the Nocturne ink, mainly because I always pick up the wrong ink pad, and that's why I've written black on there. Now you can see that if I'm not careful, I over ink, so you know, I need to be careful. So this is a permanent ink, and it's going on to that surface that isn't porous, and these are designed for porous surfaces, so you just need to be aware of that. And because it's no longer a porous surface, it's going to remain wetter longer, so it'll sit on that surface. So you do need to remember to dry a little bit. You also need to remember the most important thing is to give that ink time to do its job, and then you'll get less frustrations. So let's ink this again, and this time I'll put a little bit of copier paper underneath so that that oily ink does not go onto my non-stick craft sheet and create me another little mess that's a bit stubborn to clean up. And then I'm just going to add this little floral here, like so. There we go. So I've now got my florals on there, and remember to roll your stamp. Don't stretch it, don't overstretch it. You're not meant to pull on your stamps. So then we've got our inks, and that is just sitting on there at the moment. So let's give that a little bit of a dry. Let's turn that over just so that we flatten that out a little bit. Now what you can see is that the grey text in the background is not fighting with the focal image now, which is lovely. And what I'm going to do is I don't want to get too many products out, so I'm just going to use that dark Villainous Potion and some shaded lilac. So I'm going to take the dark Villainous Potion and the shaded lilac. Now obviously you could have another Thrinchie ready just to mop this up. I'm not going to do that because we've mopped up and you don't want me to carry on forever. So I'm just going to use the one brush, a little bit of water. That's non-existent water, Tracy. And it doesn't matter because I've already got purple on here. So just like with my pencils, I'm picking up that dark Villainous Potion. And I'm going to add the Villainous Potion to my floral. So just adding that dark, really dark colour. Just picking up that dark pigment. So let's do this one as well. And when you feel like it's not moving much, you've not got much moisture on there, then just dab into a little bit more. So that Villainous Potion is really dark. Let's bring in that dark. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse my brush. Look at the pigment in there. A wonderful amount of pigment. I'm then going to pick up the Shaded Lilac, and I'm going to pick that up and I'm going to blend it out with that Shaded Lilac. I'm going to blend out that dark colour. So the Shaded Lilac is blending out that dark Villainous Potion, just so you don't have any harsh edges. Nice, easy, simple way to colour, just using the same colours. Oh, I've now gone into the dark colour. Well done, Tracy. Let's go into the Shaded Lilac. So that Shaded Lilac is just blending out that dark colour. So if you want, you can continue to create more layers by layering that ink onto another Thrinchie and creating another one, should you wish. That is entirely up to you. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add, where's my white paint? Not here, obviously. There we go. Now I'm going to use a Winsor & Newton Gouache opaque paint. Now this has got moisture in it, so it is going to react a little bit with your oxides. You just have to remember these little things, that so you know what to expect mainly. So I'm going to pick up this white pigment, and then I'm just going to just go around and just add a little bit of this white pigment just around those florals. Can you see I've not dipped it into any more of that white yet? Can you see I've just used what I've got on my brush so far, and obviously it's getting less and less opaque, but that's fine because I want to blend it out. So I'm taking a little bit more. Use any of your white paints, but just remember, if it isn't opaque, then obviously you're working with something that doesn't do the job. Opaque means that you can't see through it, unless, of course, you water it down. Then, of course, you're making that product less opaque. So let's just grab a little bit more of that. And where this colour is, I want it a little bit. Now you can see I'm struggling to move that. So if I dilute it, if you dilute it too much, well then you lose some of that opacity. But what I'm doing is just sort of blending that out. Can you see? Just blending that out. But what I'm doing is I'm not sort of colouring out the whole of the background so that you can't see that background I've created. So I'm making sure that I keep some of that background. If your paint is too thick and you can't get it to work, just add a touch of water. Keeping in mind that the minute you add that touch of water, you change the opacity, which works to our advantage in this project. Picking up that little bit of water and a little bit more of the thicker paint. And you can see the opacity in that. Pick a little bit of that watered down paint, just so I can move it a little bit. Just so that that stands out a little bit more. So picking up a little bit of that watered down, and then just bring in a little bit. So just because it's a Thrinchie doesn't mean that, you know, we want to sort of race that. Look at that, just so you can see that. But we're not sort of racing, we're taking our time in creating our project. Now I'm going to, I think I've got enough on there, I don't necessarily need any more. Now what's great is my white is dry and the paint's dry now, so we just need to give that a really good clean. Now the thing is, your brush is going to have a lot, look at that, a lot of that white in there. That's because it's an opaque paint, it's a good quality paint because it's Winsor & Newton, and therefore it's highly pigmented. Look at that, that's the second time. And you've seen how much I've used. I've not exactly used gallons of paint. Look at that. Third time, it's still got that white paint in there. Fourth time. And unless you do these things, you don't learn about your product. That's a fifth time. So there's still paint in there. Sixth time. But unless you do these things, you don't learn about the product. Seventh time. And it's still got some white paint in there, so it is highly pigmented. So the idea is, yes, it's in this small jar, but you use very little of it. So I'm now going to use the Posca paint pen, and I'm going to add touches of white just to my design, just so that that pops a little bit more. And I'm quite sort of free with that. You know, I'm not very regimented with it. And then I'm going to add these dots, just like it's the pollen, just because that gives that a little bit more interest as well, just so that you can see that. And that white just does make it pop a little bit more. So it works really nicely. I'm then going to take another one of my chickens. Look, I've lost one because I've not stuck it on the acetate. So I'm going to take the other little chicken. Now I've used this to use my inks on there. So I need to make sure that that stamp is not going to fall off. So just be mindful of that. So I'm just going to add my chicken here. So just be mindful, if like me, you're using your acrylic block as your paint palette, just be mindful that you've added moisture to there and it might make the stamp fall off. So just make sure it's fully dry. Again, I've added that chicken on there onto that oxide background. Just give that a little bit of a dry. Let's turn that over, just so that that ink isn't just sitting there. I'm then going to use my Inktense pencil. Now if you don't have an Inktense pencil, an Inktense pencil is water reactive, and once it's dry, it's permanent. If you don't have any water brushes, you can use your oxide inks to do exactly the same and add some grounding to your project. It's entirely up to you. I do love adding a little bit of grounding, that's just me. I'm then going to take my Thrinchie and then we'll add the edging again. So I'm going to, and you can see I'm just holding that down mainly because my Thrinchie is curling a little bit. So just adding the Posca pen around those edges, and I'm using this copier paper just to catch all the mess, because then cleaning the mess is a lot more simplified because I can just screw that copier paper up and not have it all over my desk. But that black edge really draws your eye into the design, which is just lovely. It really draws it into there. So now it's just deciding then on the wording and some Posca, white Posca splatters. So let's add, can you see it? I'm working too hard for that. So let's just get the paint flowing, give that a good shake. So get that paint flowing. Try not to make it too much hard work for yourself, and then try again. There you go. Much, much, much easier. That's it. Just means that I'm not sort of trying too hard to get that Posca pen moving. Let's give that a dry, just so that that Posca pen doesn't react too much. Just turn that over. Oops, there we go. And then you've got this text on here. I can just tear some of this out. I don't want that big piece of paper because that will irritate me too much. So I can tear a little bit of this text. Let's just... I really only want a little bit. Can you see? Not that I'm faffing too much. I really don't want too much. And obviously, as the card gets smaller, it then looks more like a mouse has been at it. Crikey, talk about... I just want a little bit of text. It's still not how I want it. Do you like how I can spend more time tearing a little bit of text than anything else? I think I know why. Just want a little bit of text. I know that I've grounded the chicken, but I'm decided I'm going to add a little bit of text because that's me all over. Just going to add a little bit of text just at the bottom, and all that is a little bit of text that I overstamped onto my piece of card. And I can easily bring a little bit of that into the other piece as well if I wish. Let's get rid of these itty bitty bits that look like a mouse has been in here. I can easily bring in that into the other page, but we'll have a think about that. So then on TE 48, we've got the words nature feeds the soul. I'm just going to see how that sits in my project. And if I don't know how it's going to sit, well, your acetate is your perfect friend. Yeah. So we'll just add this to our acrylic block. Again, just make sure it's not going to fall off there after you've just done all your work. And I'm going to add this here. And you can see, even with the sentiment, I'm just giving it a little bit of time because we've got those inks on there. I'm then going to, where are you? Well, I couldn't see the white pen then. So I'm just going to add a little bit of white pen just under my sentiment. Then look at that in the camera. And what you can do, you see how we've got this white text here? Let's just stamp that nature feeds the soul again and see if we prefer it on the white paper. I'm just going to use paper. It doesn't have to be card. Look at my fingers. So let's use that paper. This is just copy paper. And let's grab our scissors. Again, you could tear around it if you wish because it's just that paper. I can't even cut that straight. And then see if you prefer it with the paper. Have a look. No, I can't pick this up. Let's leave that there. So you've got Nature Feeds the Soul there, or crikey, you leave it here. Bring in. I just think that's too much, so I'm going to leave it just like that. I'm then going to come in and add this to my page. I always think it looks lovely when it's in the book. Just sort of finishes it off, just like you would mat and layer a card. It's like matting and layering my Thrinchies. They look completely finished when they're in the book, and it's not until they're in the book that you're then happy. Let's just grab a wipe. Oh, come on, Tracy. So I'm just going to grab a wipe and a piece of copy paper just to, oh no, let's grab a clean piece of copy paper, shall we? A clean piece of copy paper, just so I'm not getting my hands all over there. So then I'm going to add a few splatters to my page. Just so it continues onto the page as well. Clean that up. And then we can just add our numbers just so that you can see we've got those on there. And then we can just add our numbers. So I need to add numbers 41 and 42, and this is 43 and 44, but I can do that off camera. Now I've got a little bit of text here that I can use should I wish. So I know that's the tiniest bit of text, but for me it just then coordinates with the previous page. And funnily enough, I picked the words there, place to create. It's because our own oasis, it says in that text. But I've literally got place to create. And that's just a perfect finishing touch. Now, if you've got a slight couple of black marks like I have there, I'm just going to cover those with my white pen. Nobody knows, only me and you. There we go. So then you've got your two Thrinchies that are finished. And you know, I've enjoyed a lovely little hour just creating for the fun of it. So I hope you've enjoyed those and you'll give those a go. Now, the only thing you need to remember is, do you want to add any shading? I quite like the openness, and I'm not going to add any shading, you know, like I normally do down the stems. I'm just being a little bit different, that's all. So love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.